Welcome to the Funeral Funds Life Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Vandervate from Funeral Funds of America, and you can find us at funeralfunds.com. That's funeral, Funds.com. Whether you're interested in term life, whole life, annuities, disability, business continuation, or final expense life insurance funding, we have you covered. Our team of experienced professionals will guide you through the complexities of insurance products to help you make an informed decision. In this podcast, I'm going to be discussing prepaid funerals versus final expense life insurance. So, there's definitely some pros and cons of going either direction with a prepaid funeral or final expense life insurance. And let's just cover those separately. And I'll kind of compare each point as we go along. So, the pros is peace of mind. So prepaying for a funeral can just ease the burden financially and emotionally for family members. But by the same token, so can final expense life insurance. They're both intended to do the same thing. It's just to provide an outcome that is very predictable where family members and loved ones don't have to worry about coming up with a whole bunch of money at a time when they're already dealing with a significant trauma, losing a loved one. So if you're paying for a prepaid funeral or final expense life insurance, just understand both of them will provide peace of mind. Now, the only disadvantage of doing a prepaid funeral is most people don't pay in one payment, right? Most people don't have that money. That's why they're looking at final expense insurance or a prepaid funeral. So, what you have to understand is if you want total, complete peace of mind that if you were to die tomorrow, everything would be paid for, then final expense life insurance with first day coverage is going to be the better option. And the reason is if you just make payments on a prepaid funeral, so say you had a $10,000 plan and you make your first $100 payment on it, and God forbid you pass away in the next week or so, it will only pay out $100 because there's $9,900 that hasn't been paid. And that may take years and years and years. In some cases, it may take a decade or more, depending on how much you're paying on that. Now, when you get final expense life insurance, it's going to have coverage from the very first day if you qualify for one of those plans. And assuming you didn't make a mistake and buy one of those plans with 2-year waiting periods, we caution you against that. But yeah, with final expense life insurance, if you get the right policy, if your policy is issued and approved and goes in force today and you die tomorrow, the insurance company will pay the full benefit amount. For example, if you were paying $50 a month for a $15,000 policy, you made your first payment on the policy today and you died tomorrow, the insurance company will write that check for $15,000. So if you truly want peace of mind from the very first day and you don't want to have to worry about, gosh, how many payments have I made? Is that going to ever be paid off? Then perhaps final expense life insurance may be a better choice for you. The second pro is financial protection. So, you know, paying for a prepaid funeral, that locks you in, hypothetically, as long as you get the right plan, it locks you in at today's cost, today's prices, which technically can save you in the long run because funeral costs do tend to rise over time. But that's just as long as you get the right policy and you get everything figured out perfectly the first time. And also, you've just got to remember, most people are going to be making payments on that. So there's quite a long period of exposure for your family before it's paid off. And if giving the gift of time, yeah, it can work out fine. But, if you don't know when you're going to die, which most people don't, then a lot of people find final expense life insurance to be a better option. And how we handle the whole inflation aspect is we just get a little bit more coverage. It's just basic math. We know that prices do go up over time. So if you think you need $10,000 right now, you maybe just get a $15,000 plan, and that inflation proofs your plan for many, many, many years to come. And we can help you run those numbers just to see what makes sense for you. But yeah, what it also does too is if you were to die sooner rather than later. So let's talk about, your plan were issued, approved, and went in force today, and you died tomorrow, and it was a $15,000 plan, but your burial only costs 10,000. Well, there's $5,000 extra money there in the short term to be able to help with some other final expenses, maybe credit card bills or doctor bills or something like that. So both of them can work. It's just, gosh, one, one gives you coverage right away, and the other, you may spend up to a decade getting that thing paid off. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just if you're looking for immediate financial protection, final expense life insurance is typically going to be the direction to go. The other pro is our third pro here is customization. So prepaid funerals allow people to make arrangements that align with their personal kind of preferences and beliefs. And when you're actually prepaying the funeral, typically you can specify specific things that are going to happen. And all of that stuff should be in the contract that you sign with the funeral home. But by the same token, if you're looking at final expense life insurance, what you're doing is your beneficiaries are getting a check from the insurance company. So you don't have to worry about what you want done in the future. You can actually make note of that. We actually provide a free funeral and estate planning guide where you can record all of that and just keep it with your insurance policy. And that way your family members just follow your guidance that you've written down in that funeral and estate planning guide. So that works really terrifically. But what's nice about that, it gives you flexibility because what happens if you move at some point? What happens if you're traveling out of the state or out of the country and it's just so expensive that you can't really get your body back to where you signed up with the funeral home? Just we live in an increasingly mobile world, and maybe your kids move out of the area and they take the grandkids, and you just decide, man, I want to be around my grandkids. So now your prepaid funeral will not follow you. So now you're talking huge, massive expenses of flying your body back to a funeral home that you'd committed yourself to. So our fourth pro is reduce stress. And I think both plans, both the prepaid and final expense life insurance, both of those are intended to reduce stress. I think, in my opinion, and I'm maybe a little bit biased, I guess, but just hear me out on this. So it comes back to that first day coverage. If you're going to have to make payments for years or even a decade or so to pay for your prepaid funeral, that's a lot of financial exposure for your family and loved ones because the policy, your prepaid funeral policy is not paid off. Whereas if you do final expense life insurance and you have first day coverage, it's going to cover from the very first day. And boy, that just takes so much worry off of folks to know that, hey, I got my policy today, and from this day forward, my family's never going to have to worry about this again. Versus, hey, I did my prepaid funeral policy and I paid my first $50 and I've got another 12 years and it'll be paid off. And so, yeah, just kind of determine, how soon you're going to need that coverage. And, we hope it's not anytime soon, but, sometimes the good Lord above has different plans, unfortunately, for us. The fifth pro and our final one is guaranteed service. So prepaid funerals often come with a guarantee of service that ensures everything to be taken care of. I can tell you one thing: we've talked with so many people that have had a prepaid funeral plan, and there was still other expenses when they passed away. Of course, we don't hear that from the insured. We hear that from the family members that, that they loved us and cared about us and got us this policy. And yet we went to the funeral home and there was still extra stuff to pay that wasn't included. It was in that fine print. And boy, it's difficult when you're signing a contract like with a prepaid funeral or a funeral home, and it's what you don't know that's kind of going to be kind of the biggest risk. We just don't know what we don't know. And if you don't know the fine print to look for, um, you could be left paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more, not you, I guess your family members. So it's difficult when you're not familiar with all the legal talk and everything, and you're just not intimately familiar with all the details of what goes on during a funeral. So I guess that's just one of the other kind of nice things about final expense life insurance is you don't have to worry about that. You've got money, and when you're walking into the funeral home, you know you've got that money. So it's just really a discussion of, hey, how much is it right now? And let's get this done. There's no like, hey, let's review the contract and this wasn't included. Oh, I'm so sorry. This wasn't included. Oh, no, 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 you're mistaken. That's not written down in the contract. That's not included. So a lot of people would just say final expense life insurance is a cleaner option there though. Now let's kind of get into some of the cons here. So with some of these different plans. So the first con is limited flexibility. So prepaid funerals, they may restrict certain individuals to certain services or providers, which could limit your options. A lot of times funeral homes have relationships with specific vendors or specific businesses or something like that. And if they don't cover or have what you want or need for your loved one, then you're kind of out of luck. You're at their mercy. So with final expense life insurance, again, you get paid money. Here's how final expense life insurance works with first day coverage. You die, the insurance company pays you money, pays your beneficiaries money. And when cash is king. You've probably heard that before, right? Cash is king. So when you walk in with the cash, you walk in with a position of power. And if you don't like what you're hearing, you can just walk out the door and walk to another funeral home. And you've got a lot more power rather than being locked into one particular place. And the second con is possible loss of money. So if a person decides to cancel a prepaid funeral, they may not be able to receive a refund. And now, in all honesty, if you cancel a life insurance policy, you're not going to get your money back either, right? Because you've been paying that money for them to offset the risk. That you write a small check, they got to write a big check. So there's a little bit of each of those. But the thing is if you don't get your money back from the funeral home, then it's gone forever. And if you have a final expense life insurance policy with first day coverage, you may have cash value that is built up within that policy, and you can get your cash value out. So just something to kind of consider there as well. And then a third con is change in preferences. You know, sometimes people's preferences change as time goes on, and it might be funeral arrangements. It might be the time. It might be kind of what you want included. And, you know, we're very different people now than we were 10 years or 20 years ago. And we have different opinions and different preferences and just a different perhaps vision on how things should occur. And if you set that in place with your policy and you don't your prepaid funeral policy and things change in the future, then you are limited to contractually what's written in that agreement. So again, final expense life insurance kind of comes to the rescue here, and you're just provided money. You die, the insurance company pays money to your beneficiaries, and changes are like a non-issue at that point because it's just transactional. It's like, we've got money. Can we get this done? Yes or no? Should we go? Are you guys going to be the one to help us? Yes or no? Or is it going to be one of your competitors? Right. So I think a lot of times people like the final expense life insurance because it just puts them in a position of strength at that time when there's just going to be a lot of weakness from emotional and kind of just everything, just losing a loved one. It's a tremendously difficult time. So the fourth con would be, dependence on the funeral home. So prepaid funerals are typically organized through a specific funeral home. And boy, I tell you what, we get these policies because we want things to be paid for at some point in the future. But by the same token, we don't want that future to get here too quickly, right? We want to live a long time. And, funeral homes go out of business, they go bankrupt, things are run differently. And, how they save and invest that money that you're providing to them is different with different funeral homes. So, I mean, you might think, well, how do they make money? If I give my money now and inflation increases the price and they don't charge more, how's that work? Well, they invest that money. Well, if they make a poor investment and don't get the return, then potentially they could go out of business, or their fund for managing these expenses, these actually future obligations might run short. So you just got to really make sure that you've got a really sound funeral home, and there is just no way to tell unless they're going to open up their books and show you everything. So there may be some national chains out there where you've got a little bit more protection, because if that one goes out of business, then, there's another one you could go to, maybe in another town or another city or another county or something like that. But with final expense life insurance, yeah, you just don't have that dependence on the funeral home. So you can actually shop around and just make sure you can shop around beforehand if you've got a preference, but we always encourage you to maybe have a second or third choice in there too. That, if by the time you do pass away, they're out of business, or maybe they're under new management and they've had a lot of complaints or something like that, that your family members can actually have some alternative choices. And you can write that in down in our funeral and estate planning guide that we provide free on our website. And then the last con we're going to talk about today is just the inflation risk. So when we prepay for a funeral, it can save you money in the long run. Um, but you got to start early. You got to start really early. It's not something that you should probably consider late in life. If you get this in your 40s or 50s and you prepay for it, and as long as they're in business when you do pass away, it can save you money because you've only paid X amount and you've got all these inflationary increases, and the funeral home is going to accept the risk of inflation at that point. So it can work in your favor that way. But later in life, it's like, do you have enough time to get that paid off? And that's why a lot of people find final expense life insurance with first aid coverage just so beneficial, because again, it pays from the very first day versus possibly having a plan that's not going to be paid off for, 8, 10, 12, 15 years, whatever the agreement you work out with the funeral home would be. So by and large, both have positives, both have some negatives. I think in most cases, for people who want 100% certainty that things are going to be protected from this day going forward, I think final expense life insurance just works a lot better. If you're making payments, if you had 10 or $15,000 you could just plunk down out of your savings account or your checking account, then maybe that prepaid funeral would be better. But go back and re-listen to this and listen to all the hazards of that. What happens if they go out of business or they get sued, or your investments, the money that you put in, they put in poor investments and now they can't cover things in the future. So my name is Randy Vandervate, and I hope this podcast has been helpful for you. Funeral Funds of America can help you qualify for first aid coverage or benefits at funeralfunds.com. That's funeral, funds.com. Or our phone number is 888-862-9456. We will be blessed to help you with this in the future. Until that day comes, stay safe, take care, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.